After the eldest daughter of the Song family went blind, her brother broke off their engagement and fled abroad. Her parents had no choice but to have me, their adopted son, marry into the family as compensation. I took care of her meticulously for 5 years until she finally regained her sight. Just as she was about to fulfill our marriage, her brother appeared at the wedding with flowers in hand, kneeling down to make a passionate confession. She, who had always been cold as ice, cried until her eyes were red, threw away the wedding ring and rushed off the stage, questioning why her brother took so long to come marry her. At that moment, all the guests were watching me become a laughingstock, yet I quietly changed out of my wedding attire and gave the wedding back to them without making a scene. She praised me for being understanding and gracious, saying this was just her playing along, promising that the position of the Song family's son-in-law would always belong to me. I smiled without saying a word and silently booked a flight ticket abroad. She still doesn't know that my care for her was also just based on a financial transaction. Now that her old love has returned, it's time for me to go live my own life. Just as I walked off the stage, I heard Brother Liang explain. Yao Yao, back then I left for abroad because I was diagnosed with cancer. I didn't want to burden you. I never expected it was all a misunderstanding. The fact that you can see again today is also due to my prayers day and night. You've always been the only one I love. That has never changed. My mother pushed me aside and took my girlfriend Song Yao's hand. Also speaking of Li Yang's deep affection, Yang Yang truly loves you. He was just afraid of causing you trouble. Now that the misunderstanding has been cleared up, you two should get back together. But they clearly knew that Li Yang had rejected Song Yao because of her eye injury, refusing to marry a blind woman, and had threatened suicide to break off the engagement and go abroad. My parents didn't want to break the long-standing friendship between the Li and Song families, so they arranged for me to marry into the family instead. Now that Song Yao's eyes have recovered, he came rushing back to steal her away. Unfortunately, Song Yao won't believe these lies of his. After all, back when she was so ill that she cut her wrists in despair, Li Yang never once visited her, and even rubbed salt in her wounds by cruelly saying he never loved her. During those 5 years when she lived in darkness, I was the one who stayed by her side, taking care of her attentively. I would tell her stories, attend to her needs, and be her eyes. I had been so confident. But in the next moment, I saw Song Yao, with tears in her eyes, take Li Yang's hand and say chokingly, I knew you must have had your reasons. Looking at their tightly clasped hands, I W. As stunned and could only smile bitterly. I had been naive. Li Yang was the person Song Yao loved enough to attempt suicide over. How could I, merely a substitute, ever take his place? The mother watched them reconcile and showed an expression of relief, then turned to see me still standing to the side, immediately frowned, and scolded irritably. What are you still doing here? Isn't it enough that you took Yang Yang's place and enjoyed 10 years of happiness? Now you want to steal his wife too. Looking at these parents who were gentle in my childhood memories, but now with hatred in their eyes, pushing and cursing as they drove me away. My heart couldn't help but clench painfully. Back then when Li Yang went missing, they were devastated and adopted me because I looked like him. Those 10 years, with parents who loved me dearly and Song Yao, my intimate childhood sweetheart, were the happiest times of my life. But the moment Li Yang returned, I was instantly cast back to what I really was. My parents felt I had stolen their love for Li Yang, and they couldn't stand me anymore. Even Song Yao, who used to insist she would marry no one but me, fell into his embrace. Meeting their hateful gazes, I dejectedly lowered my eyes. Yet ironically, they had raised me, so I didn't even have the right to be angry. I nodded, preparing to exit the scene. When I turned around, Song Yao finally noticed my lonely figure, and she raised her eyebrows at my parents, saying, Uncle, Auntie, please don't speak so harshly. What do you mean by steal? He is my husband, and no one can replace his position. As I watched her slowly walking towards me, a touch of emotion rose in my heart. She was still on my side, just like when we were young. Song Yao held my hand and whispered, Aze, I was just playing along with him. After a while, I'll go skiing with you, your favorite activity. Li Yang, who had followed, let out a light chuckle upon hearing this. I could only respond with a bitter smile. We grew up together. How could she forget? When I was young, I got a concussion while learning to ski. Since then, I've developed a psychological trauma and have feared this sport. The one who had always been eager to go skiing was Li Yang. So, I was still his substitute. From beginning to end, nothing had ever changed. Li Yang put his hand on my shoulder with a big smile. Sure, let's go with the whole family then. Song Yao's parents pulled her. Yao Yao, don't waste your timing for someone irrelevant. Song Yao broke free from their grip and whispered in my ear. Don't overthink it. He dumped me 5 years ago, and I'm not letting it go. I want to use these 5 days to get back at him. Once this time is over, we'll get married and live a good life together. I nodded, watching them leave. At this moment, a message came from my boss. Li Zhe, the U.S. headquarters really AP. appreciates you and wants to transfer you there. If you're okay with it, you'll depart in 5 days. I looked up towards the stage. Song Yao was holding Li Yang's arm, taking photos with both families. They are the ones who make a perfect, happy family. I was always just an outsider. Suppressing the bitterness in my heart, I replied, "No problem. I'll head back to the office now to hand over my work." Seeing my instant reply, my boss asked curiously, "Aren't you getting married today? There's no rush. Take time to discuss it with your wife first. Coming in tomorrow would be fine too." After Song Yao's car accident left her blind, she was cruelly abandoned in her darkest hour, which led to her developing a severe mental illness. When I first started caring for her, she would scratch me every day, leaving wounds all over my body. But later, she gradually grew accustomed to my presence, and at night, she couldn't fall asleep unless she was holding my hand. If the promotion opportunity had come before, I would have worried about her mental state and given up my career prospects to stay and take care of her. But now, I see her standing beside Li Yang, smiling brightly, her mental state restored to what it was before her illness. Now that her true medicine has returned, it's time for me, the substitute, to exit the stage. I quickly replied, "The wedding is off." On stage, Li Yang slipped the wedding ring onto Song Yao's finger as the crowd cheered, no one noticing my departing footsteps. After completing the handover at the company, I left the office building. Song Yao wasn't at the wedding venue. Instead, she was unexpectedly waiting for me below the company building, holding red roses. She leaned against the luxury car, waving at me. My colleagues gave me a teasing look before dispersing. I felt strange, but still walked quickly towards her. "Aze, why did you suddenly leave? Haven't you eaten yet? Let me take you." Before she could finish, Li Yang got out from the driver's seat and impatiently interrupted. "Yao Yao, why are you wasting so much time talking to him? Li Zhe, the family jade that the Song family gave to their son-in-law. You've worn it for 5 years. It's time to return it to me, da." Song Yao angrily pushed him, telling him to speak properly, then turned to me and said softly, "Don't listen to his nonsense. You're the only son-in-law I recognize in the Song family. As for the jade, he needs to wear it at today's family dinner. Could you lend it to him? He'll return it tomorrow, okay?" I took out the family jade from my chest, the emerald stone still warm from my body heat. Song Yao didn't know that my marriage into the Song family was just a transaction. Her parents never truly considered me as the Song family's son-in-law. Because my origins were unknown, they thought I was a bastard, not even worthy of marrying into the Song family. They paid me a monthly salary to take care of Song Yao. The day she no longer needed me would be the day I had to leave. Naturally, they were unwilling to give me the family jade heirloom. It was Song Yao who insisted against her parents' opposition and personally put it on me. I'll always remember her gentle whisper then. "Li Zhe, since you're my husband, you should have everything that's rightfully yours." Now, she's come personally to take back this family jade meant for her husband, to take back the special treatment she once gave. Without hesitation, I removed the jade and handed it to Li Yang. Returning it to its rightful owner, no need to give it back. Hearing this, Song Yao frowned. "It was just a loan. What do you mean? Don't you want to be part of the Song family anymore?" Li Yang laughed coldly. "What else could it mean? He's just acting pitiful again to gain your sympathy. Just like when he was young, to spite the whole family, he refused to take the car even though it was available, and insisted on walking home barefoot in the dead of winter, as if our family had mistreated him as an adopted son." Hearing his words, Song Yao seemed to recall something, her expression dropping with displeasure. But things weren't like that. After Li Yang was found when he went missing, he kept crying about the hardships he had endured. I had to get up before dawn to cut grass for the pigs, walk barefoot up the mountains to chop firewood in winter, could only eat 1 meal a day, and didn't even have any vegetables. The parents were upset that for the past 10 years, their biological son had suffered while I, an outsider, lived in comfort. So they wanted me to experience all the hardships he had gone through. After that, I was forced to get up at dawn to pull weeds, made to walk barefoot home in winter. While the whole family ate delicacies, I alone ate chaff and vegetables. Even the household servants ate better than I did. Whenever I begged them not to treat me this way, they would always say this was nothing. Li Yang had suffered much more than me. But I wasn't the cause of his suffering. I was just an abandoned baby taken in by the parents. Word of their abuse of me quickly spread, and to protect the Li family's reputation, they pushed all the blame onto me. They said I was jealous of Li Yang's return and deliberately did these things to embarrass them. After that, I became the bad kid that everyone in the circle wanted to punish, and all the children isolated me. This also led to Song Yao, who had always been close to me, turning against me and soon after starting to date Li Yang. At that time, I was afraid she would despise me. I told her the truth. But no matter how I explained it or how much evidence I provided, Song Yao never trusted me like before, and instead grew to despise me more and more. Now, facing her scrutinizing gaze, I didn't explain in anything and just shook my head. I was leaving anyway, so let the misunderstanding remain. I turned to leave, but Song Yao grabbed my hand, sighing as if in compromise. Come to the family dinner tonight. Get in the car. I nodded. It was meant to be our last meal before parting. I sat down in the back seat. Throughout the journey, Song Yao sat in the passenger seat, chatting and laughing with Li Yong, talking about their happy times together. I remained silent. The car stopped at the Song family's house, and when we reached the living room, I discovered my parents were there too. When they pushed a kidney donation consent form in front of me, I finally understood why I was invited to this family dinner. Li Yong had been diagnosed with uremia and needed a kidney transplant. I recalled the medical examination my family had arranged for me a few days ago, and everything suddenly became clear. They must have found out that my kidney was a match for Li Yong, and now they were trying to force me to save him. While serving food to Li Yong, my mother-in-law said to me, "Lise, your parents didn't raise you all these years for nothing. You need to be sensible and show gratitude." My father let out a cold snort and spoke. "If you're unwilling to donate, we can pay you." Li Yong, the person in question, then spoke with fake sincerity. "I hurt Yao Yao before, it was my fault. Don't try to save me anymore, just let me die from this illness. Consider it repaying my debt." Seeing this, Song Yao's eyes flashed with concern as she held my arm and persuaded. "Zay, you've always been the kindest since childhood. You surely wouldn't bear to watch your brother die, right? It's just one kidney. After some proper recovery and care, it won't be a big deal. Looking at everyone pressuring me before I could even sit down, I smiled self-mockingly. "When is the surgery?" Everyone seemed uncomfortable with how quickly I agreed. Father said gravely, "Tonight. The sooner the surgery, the sooner the recovery. I turned my head to look at Song Yao. Song Yao, who would usually help me, remained silent now, as if afraid I might refuse. All the acting was just pretense. She loved Li Yong too much and worried something might go wrong with his illness. That's why she rushed to trick me back for this family dinner. I didn't refuse. "Fine, but I have one condition. As soon as she heard I had requirements, my mother's face turned cold. "So you're still greedy for money after all? I've wasted all these years raising you." Song Yao also felt asking for money was inappropriate and raised her eyebrows as she tried to persuade me. "Zay, you should repay your parents' kindness in raising you. How can you ask for money?" Before I could say anything, they had already hastily labeled me as evil. I shook my head and said to my parents, "I don't want money. I want tea. I'll sever ties with you. From now on, I won't owe you anything anymore." My parents were stunned, not expecting me to say this, but they had no objections and quickly agreed. Without even having a chance to eat anything warm, I was arranged to be hospitalized that same night and wheeled into the operating room. When I woke up from the anesthesia, I was already back in the hospital room. Li Yong was sitting beside my bed, peeling an apple. We both had surgery, so how come he seemed completely fine? Just as I was wondering about this, Li Yong cheerfully explained. "Surprised, aren't you? Lise, I was never actually sick. I did this just to make you understand more clearly. Mom, Dad and Song Yao were never on your side. To save me, you'd throw away your worthless life at any moment." As the anesthetic wore off, I felt the pain in my body and lowered my eyes in silence. I knew from early on that no matter what I did, I couldn't compare to him. After all these years, I've long since come to terms with it. Whether he was sick or not, I've fully repaid this debt of gratitude. Li Yong mocked me a few times, then continued pretending to be sick. He was taken home to be cared for by a private doctor, while I stayed in the hospital all alone. I took out the voice recorder I had prepared from under the bed and had it gift-wrapped. During my hospital stay, only Song Yao came to visit me. Seeing my weak state, she looked apologetic. "Zay, I've arranged for a caregiver for you. Please wait for me a few more days. I'll come back to see you once I'm done with my busy schedule." I handed her the wrapped voice recorder. She smiled and took it, about to unwrap it. I stopped her. "Wait 4 days before opening it. Otherwise there won't be any surprise. It was already early morning of the second day, with only 4 days left until the 5-day deadline she mentioned. Song Yao happily accepted it and nodded. "I'll come pick you up from the hospital in 4 days. Then we'll go get our marriage certificate. Zay, can we stay together forever and ever?" I nodded vaguely, watching her leave. Shortly after, Li Yong sent me a message. "Lise, do you believe that with just one word from me, you won't be able to get back this family heirloom jade?" Only then did I remember that today was the day Li Yong was supposed to return the jade to me. I didn't care about his provocation, because I never intended to take it back anyway. Just as I was about to close the chat, Song Yao suddenly called. "Zay, I'm sorry, Li Yong is being difficult. He just got out of hospital and is still sick. Getting angry isn't good for his health. Could you let him keep the jade for a few more days? I'll definitely come back in 4 days, okay?" She only remembered that Li Yong was sick, but forgot that I had just come out of surgery. I replied, "It's okay," and hung up the phone. During this time, Li Yong had been staying at home with Song Yao and would occasionally send me provocative messages. The next day, he sent me a video of him and Song Yao making a birthday cake together, looking blissfully happy. By the third day, They had already taken their wedding photos. On the day I was leaving, Liang said, Lise, I'm going to the Civil Affairs Bureau with Yao Yao to get our marriage certificate. We'll be going on our honeymoon soon, so stop pursuing Yao Yao. She belongs only to me. I still didn't respond to him. I processed my hospital discharge papers alone, rushed to the airport, and boarded the plane. Goodbye, Song Yao. Meanwhile, Liang put away his phone and smiled at the beautifully dressed Song Yao. Yao Yao, are you ready? We should head to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get our marriage certificate. Song Yao put away her lipstick, directly pushed away his extended hand, and grabbed back the family jade. I'm going to get married, but not with you. Liang froze, his face full of surprise. Yao Yao, haven't we been just as happy together lately as before? What do you mean by this? Is it that kid Lise, spreading rumors behind our backs again? Song Yao's eyes turned cold. Because this is exactly how you treated me before. I want you to experience what it feels like to be dumped abruptly. Liang had always been the one rejecting others. This was the first time he got dumped. He became furious instantly. Song Yao, you choose that bastard over me. Hearing this, Song Yao raised her hand and gave him a resounding slap across the face. Watch your mouth. Lise is my only husband and also the brother who saved your life. Is this how you treat someone who saved you? She ignored the hysterical Liang behind her, carrying the gift I gave her while humming happily as she drove to the hospital. Say, I'm here. Did you miss me? She happily pushed open the hospital room door, only to find the room empty, with a nurse making the bed who turned